Hi, everybody. Andrea Fair here with Flying Free Ministries. I'm so excited to be here today to journey with you through my story and to remember that there can be hope during chronic illness. Hope. The Gnostic Webster Dictionary says that hope is yearning with expectation, anticipation, and hopelessness is feeling despondent and despairing. Different perspectives. People have different perspectives on hope. If you catch me on a good day, I'm like, yay, let's have hope. Yay, life is good. It's going to get better. Even in all the crazy that's going on in the world, it's like, yep, it totally sucks, but there is hope. However, there's different seasons in my life where hope was hard to come by. When I had lots and lots of tests for my mystery illness and no results, I got frustrated and it was hard to keep hold on to my hope. I am a woman of faith, and as most of you know, and for there's a verse in Proverbs that talks about when hope is deferred, it makes a heart sick, and that is, I'm sure, much of many of your stories how chronic illness can just deplete your hope, right? Because you want healing, you want hope, you want to figure out what's going on, and there seems to be roadblocks in your way. When I was thinking about my journey, I also thought about Anne of Green Gables because I have no idea why. But anyway, Anne of Green Gables had that one scene where the young Anne had written for a magazine and not gotten in, and she was disappointed. Her hope had been deferred, and she said, I something. What did she say? She said she talked about. Oh, Marilla had said, "Oh, Anne, her guardian who was a little bit grumpy sometimes. Or just a different personality too. She said, "Oh, Anne, you set your heart too much on frivolous things, and then you're disappointed when it doesn't work out." And Anne goes, "Well, I suppose you're right, Marilla, but I'd rather fly up on the wings of anticipation and endure the thud than not dream at all." And so I think she said, "I couldn't help but flying up on the wings of anticipation. It almost pays for the thud." And then Marilla says, "I would rather do without both flying and thud." So I know there was parts in my journey that I've definitely wanted to do without both flying and flood. And then I'd have weird seasons when all of a sudden I just had like this yearning to know, to understand what was going on with my body and why it had totally changed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Chronic illness is definitely a thud, and it's the worst variety because it comes out of nowhere often, creeping up on you, causing you to wonder if you're losing your mind or what is going on. Choosing to hope when your expectations have been shattered is definitely a battle. Hope can seem to mock you. Reaching for hope seems more painful than succumbing to the darkness around you. I definitely faced that. We didn't start out that way, though, did we? We had good plans. I never dreamt that I would be struggling with chronic illness and suicidal thoughts when I was in my 20s. No one ever does. I had a good plan. I wanted to be a wife. I wanted to be a mom. I liked leading and teaching, and then life changed, right? Life changed a lot. Eventually I found my man, but not as fast as I wanted to. And then we got married in 2000, sorry. Now it's 2020. So we just celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary, which is amazing. And I just have to rant about my guy for a minute because honestly, he did not sign up for my health issues. He didn't know about my health issues. I didn't know about my health issues. So we both we fell in love and got married thinking we would continue to do the things that we love doing, which is being active. We both enjoyed going on walks and just going golfing a little bit and checking out this and that, and just we like to move. And it was about a year and a half into our marriage that the thud came. And it was around Easter. And I started getting home. I was in a practicum. I'd been taking my education assistant degree at Grant MacEwan in Edmonton. And I'd come home from work and then I'd have a nap, which isn't the end of the world. I mean, I walked about half an hour to work and back. And so it wasn't the end of the world to take a nap. But afterwards, I'd still feel tired and kind of off and wasn't really sure about that. And then eventually, I would be standing in church and get really hot and then have to sit down and feel really dizzy. And that was weird because I'd always, well, and yet it wasn't weird because I remember when I was a teen, my mom being like, "Andrea, just go slow on the stairs." I'm like, "Why?" She's like, "Well, because you always have to sit at the top." And I just hadn't realized that wasn't normal because it was just my normal. So I had these kind of inklings that something was weird, but not really piecing them together that something big was going on. And sure enough, those things culminated into the beginning of fatigue attacks for me, which we didn't know what to call them for the longest time. We used to call them spells. And then I had a naturopath just be like, yeah, don't ever call them that again, because it must sound really quirky. And so people wouldn't be able to, I don't know, take it seriously, I guess, when we're trying to explain these random um, attacks that hit my body. They would leave me feeling like I was choking, someone was choking me. I wouldn't be, and then eventually as I was feeling that, and you're trying not to panic, but you're panicking, then I would lose the ability to move anything. Like it just was, everything was dead weight, and even to talk. And so suddenly, I went from being able to walk half an hour to work and walk back to missing out on tons of work, needing rides from work when I was able to go, not knowing what my limits were, not knowing when I could do what, not knowing if it was a virus, not knowing it was something huge. It was a big deal for both Calvin and I. He was just like, what's going on? And I didn't necessarily have words to articulate it because I didn't know either. And so it was just a murky road. And I know many of you can relate to that, the early days of your symptoms, and just they come out of nowhere, and part of it is not even knowing what they are. I know brain fog. I don't even remember people talking about brain fog. And now when people say brain fog, I'm like, oh yes, I know what brain fog is. And just that inability to think beyond right here, because it's so hard to think that um, yeah, you're just like, hey, I can't even do that right now. And it's so hard to explain to people who haven't experienced it. It's also tricky when we look so great, right? Like you guys look awesome. And that means that often people don't think, oh, she can't talk right now because she's having a fatigue attack. Or they don't get that I'm standing in Superstore just like counting the minutes and like just praying that it will be my turn soon, because I couldn't stand for long periods of time. So eventually I'd have to squat, and then eventually if it got really bad I'd have to leave, which I was not good at doing. So usually I'd push through and then have the I remember having a fatigue attack in my vehicle, which is not optimal either, because I had no way of connecting with anyone to help me. By the grace of God, a friend of mine pulled up beside me in her vehicle, and I was able to connect with her, and she saw me or whatever and came over and was like, what can I do? What's going on? So I got her to feed me actually in my vehicle, which kind of helped subside the everything. And eventually I was able to go home. I don't know if I can't remember if I got my husband to come pick me up that time or if I just waited it out and then drove, but yeah, things like that where it became a part of our everyday. And it was very frustrating because we didn't know, it was just ups and downs, right? We didn't know when would be a good day, when would be a bad day. The reality of flying up on anticipation that, yay, I'm having 3 good days in a row. And then the thud of these fatigue attacks that were totally terrifying and were really just made me feel lonely. Doctors would always be really hopeful when they heard my symptoms. And then once we started doing testing, they would be like, oh, yeah, you're fine, actually, which was obviously frustrating, especially when my quality of life was deteriorating a lot. I went from my practicum at Grant MacEwan to being home, and then we actually moved up to the Grand Prairie area so my husband could finish up his Bible school. And we went on a little final fling before Bible school. We drove down to Disneyland, and we did Disneyland, and I had to do it in a wheelchair, and that was hard. There are some perks to being in a wheelchair in the sense that you get to go in the lines fast, but I always felt like everyone was judging me and just being like, oh yeah, whatever, you need a wheelchair. And then I'd go on a ride and come back on a wheelchair or whatever. But at the end of the day, when we had to leave the wheelchair behind and actually walk to the parking lot, like walk through the parking lot to our vehicle, we actually got harassed a bit by someone who worked at, I think it was Universal Studios or something. And they had a group of people coming in, and they were saying, hey, you need to like get out of the way because we got these people coming. And it's like, my husband's like, we are trying. And I was just like walking, but I'm like barely moving because your legs just, you guys know what it's like to be in a wheelchair and how it's helpful in some ways, but it's not great for your muscles. And how, yeah, if you have been hot all day and not using your muscles, how hard it is to actually get up and move. And so yeah, he was like, no, as if she can walk faster than that, which did not go well with my husband. And I was just trying to focus on not passing out. So so I just kept on walking. But um, the reality of chronic illness is that there is lots of different symptoms and triggers for those symptoms. I know you know that in my book I talk about triggers, and it's hilarious to me to think that while I was in my season of chronic illness for 15 years, God was teaching me these principles. Like, that's our God. He redeems what seems for naught, what seems pointless, seems frustrating, what is all those things. He redeems it. He has a plan within it. Even though he's allowing it to happen, he knows how to make it so that you actually are able to see gifts in it, which is, I know it's crazy, it blows my mind. And I get that if you are in not that place today, that it can be really frustrating to hear that. So bear with me, and I just have been praying for you and have had others pray for you, because I know even in your journey of chronic illness, it's so individual and unique that you can really feel jealous when you hear other people's stories and feel like, why am I not there? Why didn't that happen for me? And it can be easy to get bitter or compare. So we're just praying against that stuff, because that does not help us any. And yet it's a reality that we have to face and acknowledge. It's like, hey, I'm leaning that way. Please help me, God. Um, for me, my triggers were heat. They were hunger. They were smoke. They were standing. They were excitement. Too much joy would wipe me out. Too much sadness would wipe me out. My menstrual cycle. We struggled from 2001 to 2016. We did the whole endure a lot of advice from lots of people, which you guys have experienced that. People telling you different supplements and different this and that, and whoever who got pregnant and it got better for them and whatever. And there's also the mental side of chronic illness that I really struggled with. The pain of loved ones watching you and not being able to help, the pain of them not understanding what you're going through, the guilt of burden that you're a burden to your friends and family, anger that you're not getting healed, discouragement and disappointment of having outing canceled or having to step out of outings, the terror of feeling trapped in your own body and unable to verbalize that to anyone. I remember resting in bed and realizing that I couldn't even actually like connect with anyone in our house if I really needed to. And that was just a horrible feeling of just like, oh my goodness, if I was actually joking or something, I don't know what would be happening, but if it, I just felt so alone. Like, how would I get help? And that was a real concern for me. I remember when we moved out here to the acreage, we ended up getting a security system because there had been some break-ins in the area. And I just had felt like, wow, when I am having a bed day, like, to not be able to protect myself at all, that was a creepy thought to me. And so we got that installed, and it was helpful for peace of mind. And it's just a unique way of living that only people who wrestle with chronic illness can understand. That you are actually, when you say no to things, it's not that you want to, it's more that you realize that I really can only do one thing a week or one thing a day or whatever, that you really have to plan in that. But you already know that, or you are working with someone who is experiencing that. I just want to validate that is true, and you're not trying to get out of things. You are actually struggling with what you are facing in that moment, and it's enough. And I know for myself, I have been challenged with people, well, feeling like, oh, you just want control, or you just, in a sense, yeah, we're trying to find control by managing our triggers, which isn't a bad thing. It's wrong if we're doing it to our own advantage or something. We're not being honest about it, right? But it's not wrong to be like, no, I really physically can't do that. And I'm sorry that it disappoints you, but I really am unable to climb that hill today because my legs are not working. Um, Before Calvin and I, we chose to have kids. That was a leap of faith for us. I really wanted to have kids, and yet I didn't. We had no idea if my symptoms would get worse or if it would be like the stories you hear about them getting better, or what it would be like. My first fatigue attack while pregnant or while holding my newborn. No, it was pregnant, because my first, we ended up having a C-section because I was like, how will this work? Like, I ended up in the hospital for a few days just so they could monitor me to see if it would affect the baby or it was affecting the baby, because that was hard on my brain and heart. And it wasn't. So that was good. But my doctor said, let's just do a C-section and not try to figure this out. And then, interestingly enough, the other three kiddos I all gave birth to naturally. And I had a different OB for those kiddos. And he just was like, Michael, what will happen if I have a spell or attack? And he said, oh, nothing. The baby will just, your body will do what it needs to do. So then I'm like, oh, so like, why do we go through all that pain and stuff if you can't, like, if you could just bonk us on our head and our body will just spit the kid out? Like, that sounds like a good plan. But he did not go for that. And needless to say, so we kept on having kids, and I'm sure people thought we were crazy. And sometimes we thought we were crazy, but that desire was there, and we felt like God was saying it was okay. Um, we did need help in the sense that I would have spells, and or Calvin would come home and I just would need him to take over because I could not do anymore. Um, or we would get help by being like, okay, now you're watching a movie so that I can have a nap. Um, Eventually, I learned, especially when I went through my depression, we were a few kids in, and I all of a sudden I just had realized that I'm starting to feel having thoughts, suicidal thoughts of just like, hey, I could drive in the other lane and that would be a good choice. And it's like, what? And granted, there were times when I was really tired and that's where my brain would go. So I wasn't like planning it out or anything, but that scared me a lot. And I was like, this is not okay. I need help. So that was an important step for me to go to a doctor and talk about depression and even get on some antidepressants and work through that process of just like, okay, what do I do when I feel this way? And working through the why of feeling that way. Um, and for me, that ended up being a fight with God because it was just like, hey, you allowed me to, which I'd had before, but it was like a different level. I talk about it in my book, Freaking Out to Flying Free, how I just was like laying in bed one time and I couldn't even move the sheet off my body. And I was just like, hey, God, like, seriously, what are you doing? Like, you gave me kids. And at that point, I think I was sending them once a week to a friend next door so that I could just sleep or go to town alone or probably both. And anyways, that had been a very bad day, and he just had responded in my spirit, you bring me glory. And I was just like, what? And he's like, you're just by being here, you bring me glory. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, that just made me so angry. And recently in a chat with a friend, she was telling me about core lies that Satan loves for us to believe. And she was taking it, I think, from the Soul Care book by Rob Reimer. And she was talking about, I'm like, what are they? And she's like, well, performance, control, and people pleasing. I'm like, oh my goodness. And I was thinking about it this morning. I was like, chronic illness totally hits on each of those because when you're chronically ill, your performance, like, I mean, we can have all the greatest plans in the world, but if we wake up from then sleeping and we think we can do the day, and then after we have our shower we're totally exhausted, that is the reality. Like, we just have to call in sick, right? um Also, control, we don't have control over our bodies. How many times did I will for my body not to go into a fatigue attack, and it's like, yeah, whatever, and did anyways. And people pleasing, yeah, there was we I definitely cared about what people thought about me. I would frequently have to lay down in church, which eventually I just had to get over it because this is what was if I wanted to go to church, I had to go and just deal with whatever happened. But there was lots of triggers there. Um, and so, yeah, it would be very easy to fall for any lie about performance, about control, about people pleasing. And definitely that's where God was hitting that day when he met me in my bed, when I was like, I bring you glory just by being here. Like, that's annoying. And I'm like, I wanted to be active. I always dreamt I would like be biking with my kids and we'd be exploring and we'd be having picnics and we having people over. And granted, I got to do some of those things occasionally, but definitely not to the point level that I wanted to do and how I imagined and my expectations and all of that. But I had a choice. I could either accept God's message to me or reject it. I could believe that my performance was not what he was after. He saw me as valuable because he had created me. And honestly, that was one of the first layers of that, God taking me from that lie of performance to the truth that the issue of my value was determined before the world began. But it was just like one layer of just like, okay, Andrea, are you going to believe that I value you, whether you ever get out of bed again or not? but I needed that mindset shift. And we'll talk more about that next week. Next week, I'm doing a how to move from surviving to thriving with your chronic illness. It's a workshop, so I do have a $20 fee for that, and it will be similar to this, except for that I'll have PowerPoints, and we will have a study guide to go through, and I'll give you some information. We'll be working through 4 different stages to change from surviving to thriving, even if your symptoms don't change, even if your diagnosis doesn't change. And just the things that really help me move from how will I survive to what can I do in this day? How can I live to the fullest with this quality of life, even with the unknown of if I can keep this quality of life or not? How can I still have joy, even though I don't know if I can walk today or I can't walk today? So, the next thing about what I want to touch on was just the reality of the next lie, really, which was, I guess it was connected with performance and identity too. But for me, it was just identity too, that just how could I was so embarrassed that I was struggling with depression. And years later, I met a wonderful doctor in Mexico, actually, for medical treatment. We went there. And he was like, of course you were depressed. Like, you were in the prime of your life and you weren't able to do the things you want to do. Like that's like the recipe for depression right there. But I just had blamed myself and been like, what is wrong with you? Come on, snap out of it. The performance thing, you can do better. And even you will control your emotions. You will not feel them, and you will not tell anybody. And that was all lies that needed to be broken down, and all even people pleasing, right? Because I was like, I'm a burden to my family. This is a horrible thing. And now I can look back and see, I'm like, yeah, there was pain in it for sure. But my kids learned beautiful things. And I learned beautiful things. Oh, let me grab something. I forgot to bring it over. I remember getting this little box from our youngest, and being like, okay, it's like, Mother's Day gift or something. And God had been teaching me about how he can use me in spite of my inability to move and sometimes even to speak. And so my little guy and I were working on this, and I'm like, well, we'll just color it because that's something I can do and we can do it together. And then I'll feel like I got some quality time with him, but it wasn't too strenuous. And so that's what we did. And this was 2014 Christmas. There we go. I'm glad I wrote on that. But in the front here, like, I just started writing the things that God had been showing me that were gifts. And so for me, that was like the gift of presence, being actually with my kids, not just having them around, but actually like sitting with it, engaging with them, being available. I found that on my fatigue days or bed days, I was available, even though I wasn't. I couldn't maybe talk very much, or I couldn't get up and show them things, but I was available in the sense that they didn't have to go find me. They knew, oh, mom's on the couch. I can go snuggle with her, or I can bring a book and read by her, or whatever. And then there's the gift of time, which there's the gift of time that you would actually give to someone else, but then there's a gift of time of being in bed. And I remember how God used that in my prayer life, and having someone say to me, which was kind of annoying, but kind of great, but mostly annoying, oh, Andrea, when I know you're in bed, I know you're praying. And so I just feel like, oh, okay, good. And I'm like, don't ever think that again. But at the same time, I got what she was saying. She was just thankful for that ministry of prayer that can be done in bed. There's the gift of service, even just the little things a person can do. I remember I sometimes have, well, in my rest days, I'd always be checking to see if maybe now I can get up. So I'd rest for a couple hours and then be like, okay, now I'm going to get up. And then I get up and discover that, oh, I can only do it for 15 minutes. And so learning that in that 15 minutes, what can I do for somebody else? And so even just writing one letter to one compassion kid, or one text. I didn't text back then, but very much now in those early years. But anyhow, so one little something for someone else. And it just really fed my soul, and obviously it blessed someone else. And even the gift of silence, which it took me a long time to become a fan of that, but learning to accept that gift that God had for me in that season of crazy. Hope flickered when I began to believe that I was loved despite my poor reactions to what I was facing. Hope was fragile. It's easy to feel like I can have hope if I have healing. I can have hope if I get a good result. I can have hope even if I just get a diagnosis. I wasn't diagnosed till I don't even know. I think maybe 2013 when we were in Mexico. And he's like, "You have chronic fatigue syndrome," and I'm like, "Real?" I just cried because I'm like, "Thank you for naming it," because it had just been years of wondering and trying to figure out. And we'd learned different other parts of my, like we'd learned that I had candida overdose, so I had too much candida in my gut, and so I went on a really strict candida cleanse from that experience at the clinic in Mexico in Tijuana. And then at one point, I'd been diagnosed with neurocardiac syncope, which was like your, which was causing the frustration with my blood pressure and my like feeling like I was going to faint. And if I stood too long, my arteries would just stay open and my blood would just, and it's like, okay, great. So I actually eventually did a tilt table test where they uh, made me strap me to this table and prop me up and saw how long it would take before I fainted. And I made it to about 7 minutes. And then I was like, they let me lower me down before I fainted. I never actually fainted, but getting really close is super horrible. And so, and draining. Um, so yeah, and there was medicine for that, but because I was getting pregnant or giving or nursing or whatever, and that didn't work. Eventually I did take it and it maybe helped. It's hard to tell. But it was like 4 pills a day at weird times. Like I remember coming back actually from Mexico and I was traveling with other people who had been at the clinic and all of a sudden I'm like, oh man, what time is it? And they're like, it's 10 o'clock. I'm like, okay. They like open my up my thing and take my pills and they're like, what's going on? And it was just kind of funny because it was just part of my rhythm that I have to take this every 4 hours or whatever. Um, so yeah, that was a lot. And those things, I don't know, even taking medicine kind of gave me some hope that I had a little bit of control over this thing, but it not that it was super helpful in actually having less bed days or whatever. Um, but really hope came from God that I could, no matter what I was feeling or facing, I he was happy with me. He was in love with me. I gave him brought him glory just by existing, which still blows my mind. It actually helped me with today when I was getting ready for this webinar. I was just like, oh man, why am I so nervous? Like, this is my story. I shouldn't be nervous about it. And God's just like, yeah, you can't mess this up. Like if you totally bomb it, I don't care. Like the issue of your value is not how this turns out. And so, yeah, he just became my hope, I guess, is really what the bottom line is. And my hopes began to shift from what I wanted and dreamed about to him and who he was. And to trust that even though I didn't have control over how long this would last or if it would last forever, that I could believe that he was enough for me. And I mean, I definitely had many, many, many days and times when I would cry and feel upset and frustrated or get scared of what my future would hold. Um, at times when I would call my dad because I had toddlers and he had some flexibility with his work and was like, Dad, I'm just about having a fatigue attack. And he ran across town to come be with me or call a friend to come sit with me or get stuck on the floor. I remember getting stuck on the floor in our room and I was like, I'm right beside the bed, but to move is like, my legs are in cement. So I'm like, I will just lay here because it's easier. And our little toddler brought me, it still makes me cry, his blankie. And it was just so hard to be like, why is this happening in front of my kids? Look at they're seeing like that I can't help them right now. And it was okay. Oh my, timer going off. So that was an intense part of my journey, but powerful because they learned how to be compassionate, right? They learned things through that too. So I don't know about you, but I know for me, the truth can help, but it also hurts because when you are in waiting for something that you want, which would be healing or better quality of life, sometimes it's just like, shut up, lady. I don't want to hear about your wonderful life and how it's gotten better and blah, blah, blah. I don't want to hear about gifts amid the crap. I just want the crap to go away. And so I get that, but I also know that you need to feel those things and then to allow yourself to decide, what are you going to stay in that place? Is that really working for you? Or if you're going to choose to hope again and where you'll put your hope. So again, in my workshop next week, I'm going to talk more about how do you actually do that? How do you go about switching your mindset or choosing to what will you choose? What are those decisions you need to make, and what does it look like in your now for having hope and for having freedom even in your chronic illness? We definitely had many prayers go up for healing, and I definitely had a desire to be a writer and a speaker, but was like, yeah, right, how will I ever stand to let alone speak and all these things. And even to worship in church, that was really hard for me to let go of. And even standing in church, I love singing and I love standing in worship. And so to have that taken away from me was extremely hard. And every once in a while I could stand for one song or maybe two, and it was just like, yes, and sing at the same time. And that was huge. And so I remember actually, because I was saying how if I use energy, then I'd have to lay down in church. So getting to that place where I'd slump more and more in my chair, and then it was like, everybody go say hi to everybody. I'm like, yeah, right. So I laid there, and I remember somebody coming and patting my head and just acknowledging that I wanted to be a part of it, but I couldn't. And that was special to me and continues to be special to me. The truth is that it isn't over until it's over, and we don't know what God has for us. I don't know how many years of health I get before something else happens, but I do know that God has to be my hope all the time, because everything is always changing, whether it's the world and circumstances or it's actually my physical body. 2016 was a crazy year. 2015 was brutal. My brother passed away. 2016 was crazy in that God was just like, okay, it's time for you to volunteer at this pregnancy center in town. And I'm like, are you crazy? Like, how will I say that I'm coming to town on a specific time for a specific chunk of time? Like, what? And yet I knew I was supposed to. So I just walked in obedience, and then also joined a goals group, which led to the writing of my book, because God's just like, yeah, now it's time for you to write your book. Like, are you crazy? What? And again, obedience is victory, and so we choose to obey God, what no matter the circumstances, no matter if we get how it's going to work. And then in 2016, my sister-in-law also mentioned this supplement system to me, and I'm like, oh, okay. But I was actually at that place where I was willing to try again. You know how you just are like, if someone tells me one more thing that could work, I'm gonna punch them in the nose. And then you go from that to like, actually, I kind of want to try something different because this isn't working. So God had totally brought me to the place where I was looking at my handful of supplements going, I don't know if any of these help me. Like, obviously they don't help me that much because I still am having bed days and attacks and blah, blah, blah. So I knew of a couple of them that did help me, and the rest I was like, meh, I have no idea. So when she suggested the system to me that wasn't tons more, I'm like, it's actually, I'm swapping out this money for that money. And there are testimonies of people who with chronic fatigue who have their lives have been changed. So I'm like, okay, I'll try it. And I used my password was worth it, because even though it cost me money, I was like scared that I would bail early. And she's like, just give it a year at least. And you've been sick for a long time. So that was really good advice. So I took that, and I continue to take it actually, and it's really changed my life. It didn't help right away, but over a period of time, about I don't know, 7 months later, I started. Part of it is the mental side of you don't believe that you're better because you've had it for so long. And so I'd also be like, oh my goodness, I didn't bring snacks. I'm gonna blah. And then it's like, no, but your body doesn't do that anymore. Remember? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm okay. But I had to learn that and learn to even trust my body. And it was also during that time, or actually probably more in 2015, um, after Byron had died, and I went through some grief recovery. And that really, actually, I had to do grief recovery over my health loss. That was huge. I was so mad because I wanted to work over with my grief over my brother, but God's just like, nope, you need to actually deal with your health loss and cry through that and get healing for that. And that was so powerful to actually come to a place where I could be like, thank you, body, for letting me have 4 kids. Thank you, body, for, I know it sounds kind of weird to thank your body, but mentally it was really important, because it just made me move from I'm an enemy again fighting in my body to get to do what I want to do, to I am willing to accept that my body, it needs a break right now, and so I'm going to give it that break. Anyhow, that is what I mean. And the reality too is even that God said, you know what, I want you to write a book. And I'm like, okay, what? now. And he knew that my healing was in happening while he put that in my heart. So I continue to encourage you guys. He's put things in your heart to do. I know I talked about that in Hope for Distraught Dreamers. And definitely people with chronic illness, I would think, are distraught dreamers. So if you would like that webinar, I can definitely send it to you. Just let me know. You can let me know at flyingfree at andreafair.com, and I'll give that to you. Um, Again, I just want to mention that it was during that time of not knowing and writing the book that I'm like, hey, God, what do I write about? And he's like, freedom. And I'm like, freedom. And it was, I love that he didn't let me know I was getting healed while he was telling me to write this book, because it makes it more powerful to realize that he was revealing to me, he's like, Andrea, I've been teaching you about freedom over the last 15 years. And I'm like, oh yeah, oh yeah, because I used to freak out about that, and I used to whatever. And then I'm like, okay, well, how did you teach me that? And then that's where the freedom framework, um, he's like, well, I did it this way. And I'm like, oh yeah, that is always what you bring me back to, these 4 steps. This is what I need to do so that I can come back into, oh yeah, everything's okay. So I love that he always just takes the junk and he is at work in the midst of the junk, and that he raises up those around you who can help you through your junk. And I would love to be that for you. So if you ever want to do some coaching, I'm available. My rate is $80 per hour. And if that's too much for you, then chat with me and we can figure something out. But I love hearing people's stories. And then it seems like God has gifted me with the ability to ask more questions so we can get to the bottom of things, but also just to say, okay, here it sounds like you feel really trapped. How can we tweak it? And I know in my own life, he's given me just like every time I'm like, I don't like, I need a tweak, he will reveal like, okay, if we did this differently, then that would be better. And so I know that he has that for you. And I also get that some of you aren't people of faith, and that is fine. And I just say that I love you and that God does too. And I get that maybe you're mad at him for allowing this to happen, and that's okay. And I just want you to believe and come to know that I have definitely yelled at God. I've sworn at God, and he still loves me, and he gets that that is part of relationship of just, I don't get it, make it better, fix it, I know you can, and our humanness, and that he is God, and that he can walk us through that when we choose to be honest with him about it. So I encourage you to do that. And if you need help with that, again, I'm available to help you with that. um I just want to say that as you are learning about hope, learning to believe that you have value despite your inability to perform, um, or despite the uncertainty, or even just despite the brain fog, that you you can have hope, and Christ is your hope. And if you'd like to get to know him, I just encourage you to reach out to someone who you know knows him, or reach out to me and I will walk you through that. That would be my biggest joy, to have someone come to know him through hearing my testimony of how he saved me from killing myself. He saved me from, yeah, just getting swallowed up in self-pity during my chronic illness. Something about while I was sick, like you guys know, people don't always realize you're sick. And so to continue to show up for things that I loved, like church, like um, going helping out at kids club, different things that were a sacrifice to do, but at the same time it was like, no, this is where I am going to be because I'm called to be here, even the Princeton Care Center, and be like, I am showing up trusting that God has something for me here. And even those days when I couldn't do any of that, how he was still using me in. And so do not feel that you have been sidelined because of your chronic illness, because it's not true. It feels like it seems like it, sometimes it smells like it. It is so much part of your world, but the reality is that he has such a big plan for you, no matter what it looks like from your perspective. And that's where our connection with him and asking for his perspective can change everything. So I just want to encourage you today, and I just want to bless you that your hope would be in him. And may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him today. And as you grow to trust him, is what we're all really doing. And if you'd love to hop on next Thursday, actually, Thursday, June 11th at 11, I'm going to be teaching that workshop, How Do You Move from Surviving to Thriving? And I would love to have you there. And I will be sending out a follow-up email that will have some different links in it, and that hope for the distraught dreamer, and the link for the workshop and things like that, so you can check it out and decide on what you want to do. But I just want to thank you so much for being here today, and yeah, just blessings on you, and may your hope increase even as you continue to press on in the everyday. And I am just so proud of you, beautiful warriors, because you are impacting many lives by choosing to continue on. So thank you.